Hopefully everything's recording, working. Test out all these little thingy things. And working. Okay. Let's do it. Where's Zelda? Let's see here. Huh. That's a little odd. Let's see here. Wonder if some stuff didn't get saved. What day is it? The 15th, and I didn't stream yesterday. Well, we'll see. I just noted that the... let's see. Yeah, dang, did I not save last time? That would be pretty darn dumb of me. Let me check something. Nah, there has to be a... has to be a different... I'm sorry, I'm just looking for a possible duplicated... Huh. Well... that's not good. That means that basically all the shading I did on this skeleton... granted, it's not like the end of the world, but... I thought I did a better job of making sure I saved my work. Bad. Yeah. Hey, what's up? Welcome back, Jules. Jules, I'm embarrassed. I did not... Don't look at that. I did not save the work that we did last time. So, and damn, yeah. I did a good amount of work too. I shaded these bats, and I shaded the sword, and you were there when I started shading the skeleton. That happens, I guess. Happens to the best of us? Yeah. I can see, actually... Yeah, it is okay. It's just sort of, like, not exciting for me to go back and cover some of the same ground. Then again, I'm not really sure what else to do about it. Other than, like, hunt for the, like, it must be here somewhere, but it isn't. Either I... Either I saved it in a way that doesn't make sense. Yeah, it's just not... I just didn't save it, so... Yeah, it's okay. But, as a result, I have to be kind of boring and go back. That's a little frustrating, because I even did some stuff on this background that I can tell I lost, unfortunately, a good amount of work. Yeah, I'm usually really good about saving, too. Got this far, right? So, well, it's my own darn fault. And yeah, so the background for this drawing was a little more involved, too. And perhaps I was going too overboard with it anyway, but I don't know. Doesn't make me happy to have. Okay. That's fun. It actually looks better without all those lines on it, so that's cool. Maybe I'll do that. Well, on this stream, I try to set a good example, and even if it's not exciting or, you know, amazing, if there's something that needs to get done, I'm just gonna do it. Anyway, if it feels like this is boring because nothing's going on, I apologize, but that's okay. Yeah. So it's 4:44 a.m. here in Los Angeles. I'm kind of lucky this month. I have a fairly good gig. I mentioned last time 2 p.m. there. Okay, cool. It's cool to. I'm getting a better sense. You know, Americans are so like American in our global views of things. It's there's not enough consideration about like really how big the world is, or sometimes how small the world is. But learning that there can be people all over the world who might be interested in seeing art processes is that's been a fun thing for me to learn. Anyway, this month I'm lucky. I'm booked out. This is a good busy month for me because, well, it's good and it's bad. Because it's good because I'm booked, so the work is there, so I'll be able to meet my financial obligations without stress. I know I'll have that money coming in to pay the bills and such. But on the other hand, the job that I'm booked on is not a job that is very fun or exciting, so that's not great. But that's a good motivator for me to work on this project without being stressed about outcomes, because this is like a side project. It's like long-term. And because it's long-term, it's not going to have much, if any, short-term. I mean, this streaming may never be a financially lucrative thing that I do, but I'm happy enough to, if nothing else, use it as a morale booster. Help cheer me up when the work I'm doing this month is so corporate. Yeah, exactly. That's the word. Is I'm not under a massive amount of pressure to second guess my choices this month, and that's a big relief because I don't respond well to not being busy or like not having. If I have too much downtime, like I'm not booked and I don't know what to do, I'll do dumb things, you know. That's not very good perspective. Whoa. Are you doing much interesting stuff this week? Organizing beads. That's funny. Like to make clothes or jewelry. I have small children. I have a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old, so beads are an ever-present factor in cleaning up around my house. I think often, though, frustrating, no doubt frustrating, losing work from a crash or forgetting to save, I guess. Let me just go ahead and save my work really quickly right now. An opportunity to go back and do it again differently can be seen as a good thing. Did it before, you can do it again. I'm going to... Why is it so painful to have to go back? It wasn't like I enjoyed shading it in the first place. Why should it be something that I have to feel is so regrettable? It wasn't responsible of me to not save. Definitely not best practices. But it's not the end of the world at all. I can do it better this time around. Even better. I'm about to start encouraging my kids to be less creative because they are really embracing like the messy artist stereotype right now. I was just maybe 20 minutes ago I was checking on my son. He's in a stage where he sort of doesn't He knows he doesn't want to wet the bed, but he also doesn't want to wake up and go to the bathroom in the middle of the night. So I've been trying to just wake him up myself and sit him down so that he can go. And but you know, him being stubborn and tired, he puts up a fight, and then I'm like, okay, well, whatever. So then I just put him back to bed, and you know, we pray it goes well. But I was necessarily walking through his room in the night, and his floor is just littered with all sorts of markers and pens, and I'm very encouraged by his new creative streak. Yeah. But he'll like leave like sharp scissors on the floor. Like, I'm not supposed to encourage kids to have sharp objects or like permanent markers like in their bedrooms where they can make marks on the floor or on the carpet. Compounding issues. And yet I can hardly stop them since they're absolutely insistent on it. They've just got to do what they got to do, I guess. And I can't do anything but laugh because it's like my fault, right? They've got that artistic bug all of a sudden. For my son, it really just came out of nowhere. Like, I was drawing when I was like 2 or something like that. My parents said I was drawing before I could really talk. And they were both artists in a at the time when I was growing up, and in a traditional sense as well. So there were lots of physical art materials around that they were using professionally, and I would see them draw. So I had that influence, at least. My kids, on the other hand, don't really see me draw as much with like pen and paper or anything. It's not quite the same experience that I grew up with, seeing my parents draw. And my wife is creative, but you know, not professionally so. It's interesting to see then that they have, in a way that feels like I had nothing to do with, gone about their own way of finding a passion for creativity. So that's really cool. I should read stories. I actually do like, I used to, before we had kids, I would read to my wife books that we had, books that I would be interested in reading. They could be about anything if it was just helpful for her to fall asleep hearing me read. And it was eventually got to where I would just do it automatically, and it wouldn't. I noticed that I could read without even understanding what I was. Like, I could think about like completely different things. Like, oh, I'll think about what I want to do tomorrow, or think about a project. But while I was thinking about it, I would read the story. There was no different. Like it was still as if I was paying attention to what I was doing, even though I wasn't doing it. So I had a good talent for that, I think. Yeah, eventually she would start snoring, and then I knew it was done. But I read a lot of books to her that way. There were sort of like books that like it almost helped if the book was boring, or like wasn't something that she was particularly interested in. Because if it was like a really good book, she wanted to also get caught up in the story and pay attention to it. So I would read her like old classic, like I read to her the original Gulliver's Travels. And that was actually a pretty cool book. Or at least I appreciated it. And what else? There were some cringy books too, like Da Vinci Code. I read her Da Vinci Code. That's kind of like a fun page turner. I'm going to be saving my work on the double. I'm glad the audio's coming in well. I actually have a fan on in the background. It's kind of on a low setting, but if you do hear weird background noise, it is probably just the fan. It's still pretty warm and summery. Oh, good. I'm glad you don't hear it. I want it to feel like this cave is underground, and maybe there's some sense of like tree roots that are somehow holding the ceiling together or something, or growing into the scene. What are you studying at university? And you don't have to disclose. I'm just making a chit chat. I didn't actually go to college, so. Philology. Philology, that's interesting. Philology. Is that like plants? I don't know why I would guess that, but you can tell I don't know what philology is. Oh, that's interesting. Learning about the language, phonetics, grammar, speaking, writing, etc. Also, literature and history of UK and USA. That's fun. I wonder why I've never specialty in communication and media. That's good. feel like solid academic topics. I'm super. I should just say I'm super. Like I got pretty bad grades in school, and I didn't go to college in any real sense. I have a brain that I have a brain. I have a kind of bad instinct for academics. I really like learning, but I don't necessarily thrive in a classroom setting. I feel more comparatively when I just sort of said, screw it, I'm gonna just see if I can make money as an artist. Like that really felt like I was very self-motivated to do well and succeed. Which is a relief, because I think if you can at least do that, I think too many people maybe have the other problem where it's like really driven to do well in school and then not so well in like a competitive sense in the quote-unquote real world. Not that I gave myself much choice either. Language freak. Okay, all right. Now you'll probably speak like 10 languages. 10, 20, 30 languages. 8 languages, very cool. I can barely speak English, so that won't impress you. But I'm fluent in the visual arts, yes. In this background, I'm trying to design a space that feels like it's real, but also comfortably recedes from vision so that we don't feel too distracted by it. So having a sense of airiness and softness is what I'm trying to convey. Everyone has their own thing. Thank you. I hope I get so anxious about things I read online about art and technologies that seem to be at odds with the interests of artists in general. It's very I don't know if it's... Well, I'm encouraged by... Here's something that encourages me, is by and large it really feels like the public like doesn't want to be entertained with AI over real artists. If it wasn't already happening. There's definitely, I think, a movement now of having a clear preference for authenticity and realness in media and in the arts, and just having AI generated slop taking up all the space and pushing artists to the fringes, or making things harder than they need to be. I feel like the public at large is supportive of real human artists. That said, I am also aware that the entertainment industries, being what they are businesses that are excited at the idea of completely doing away with the bottleneck of artistic production, artists being the source of art. It's just always been a frustration for people who make money off of artists, because we're reputationally, at least, slow and hard to work with, and not necessarily talented where we should be, or not all talented at the same things. Yeah, fuck the AI. Thank you for, there's not much that can, I'm not sure what can really be done other than making your preferences known, where you can choose to seek your entertainment and make choices about that. But repudiating and repudiating AI and selecting for realism, or real authentic humans, even if our output isn't as eye-poppingly good, and in many cases it won't be compared to AI, but at least it's real, right? I talk about that stuff too much. Yeah, the beauty of creation. I'm not as like, I don't like the this feels like too much structure up here. Just looks like a random window. Think about what else could go here. It is a problem. Right now, what bugs me probably the most is and even I'm doing this, where I'll see an image and it looks cool, so I'm like, oh, awesome. But then I'm like, wait, I was about to like it. Am I about to like something that is AI? And sometimes it's obvious, like, it'll be like a cool picture of Batman. Like literally today I was like, oh, it's a cool drawing of some comic book heroes. But in the sky there were two moons. And like, maybe if this is like Star Wars, you're gonna have two moons. But not if it's Batman, you know. So I was like, no, It's AI. But that was something that was in my feed, despite my clear preference against AI. I can't stop it from popping up and being influential in my life and other people's lives, and I just don't know what's the best. It just doesn't seem super effective, but I don't know if I can do anything about it except just try to set a good example or doing things not with AI. But the only way I know how to do that is like this way, which is it's not instant gratification. It's so hard to make a case for doing things slower, I guess, in a world where people already have no time. I'll hide things a little bit by... Yeah, there we go. Just add some more roots to sort of cover things up. But people, by and large, do not want to be tricked by what they're seeing, unless they want to be tricked. And you know, and if they do, and I don't blame people for wanting novelty, interesting memes or whatever. I think I've seen some very funny AI memes, and I think that's a great use case for it. It's like art slop, basically. But it's a broader issue, though. Art has always had an authenticity problem. It's always had a public relations problem. If I can say that there's any silver lining, it really does sort of it forces the issue with a lot of different things into law that have always been problems. And maybe now there will be some real political will to make a final decision. Like, you know, are we gonna use this now to really explain like what creativity is and how things are different when a human creates versus like a machine. Now that machines can create, are we ready to say that machines can be artists? And if so, you know, to what extent do we grant them or deny them artistic protections? I don't know. Oh, hey, Luke. Yeah. Well, it's interesting. Like, in some ways, what I do is code. I'm not even, like, necessarily... I'm not against the... when I was young, I had an idea to... When I was young, I didn't have... I had a big ego when I was young. When I was like 18, 19, and I was learning about computers, I had an idea to like make a program that made art like all by itself. Not a tool to make art, but something that made art by itself using the same thought processes that I did. Can I put that into code? Can I I make art with it, and can that be valid? And I wrote it all down as a thought experiment. And the thought experiment went like this, that if I programmed it to make art like me, and then passed that artwork off as my own, and people were fooled by it, then that would indicate a couple of things. Either machines could make art via programming, or I don't remember. There were different scenarios in which it would either prove that art, the opinions about art were sort of arbitrary and based on people's imaginations about what was happening, and you could tell I was very cynical when I was young. I wasn't particularly romantic. As I grew up and would meet other artists, I would actually not be super I didn't tend to like other artists that I met. They didn't seem to think about the big questions that I did, and I was very sort of elitist about it. And I'd be like, well, you're not as artistic as me because you're not thinking about art philosophies and really critically thinking about what it means to be an artist. Here I am thinking about computers making art, and you're just drawing silly pictures, trying to figure out a gimmick. And so I was not very generous with my spirit, my artistic spirit. Despite being an artist, I was not a generous source of artistic neighborliness. I don't know what I'm saying. But what's funny is now that this stuff is kind of getting real, and I'm like, okay, it's not hypothetical anymore. It's pretty clear. It's real humans versus the machines. And even if I do have, some misgivings about other human artists, I'll take the real human artists that, are not big brain philosophers like me. I'll take that over machines any day. So I've picked a side. Definitely. I talked about this before, but with my kids being into art and me getting older, I'm like, okay, we've limited time on the planet to make a difference, so let's make a difference for those that will come next, and advocate for the fundamentals and doing things traditionally where we can. So that human artists can thrive and have a real space in the future. Yeah. I think about it a little. Obviously, what you're saying is true. The difference is I'm using my brain, skill, and effort. An AI is using code and averaging all sorts of different points of data to auto-complete, some artwork. I feel like what impresses us about art also has to do with the risk the risk of failure. If a machine does or doesn't do something, machines aren't impressive in their output. There's no downside or risk of humiliation or loss of reputation if they fail to do what I mean, I guess in some ways it could be, but like a person who is in the Olympics and gymnastics on a stage, like putting themselves out there to do what they do. We've all seen it where even the best gymnasts can try and then fail. That's why we have so much admiration when what they do is so difficult, right? So when they succeed, it's so impressive. I find the live streaming to be an interesting and fun challenge because it's live, because I can be here doing what I do, but if I can do this in a bad way and just embarrass myself, I suppose. Right, there's something about the story of there's a chance that it might fail. Even if someone is extremely... I'm doing the opposite. What is that? How am I doing the opposite? I'm just rambling too, so if I feels like I'm losing my train of thought, it's because I probably am. Oh, yeah. Well, thank you. If I can, I want to make a demonstration of techniques that look like they can hopefully compete with AI. Yeah. It is good, at least for now, with my work. I'm a storyboard artist in commercials and entertainment, and it's frankly a little bit of a sigh of relief that, at least for me, work isn't completely gone. It's not busy for me right now, but it is, it's not completely dead compared to some other industries, some other artistic positions. Animation is having a hard time right now too, but AI doesn't necessarily replace animation the way it wants to. Anyway, I talk about AI too much. We'll see. What will happen, at least if I have any control over it is the shading technique I'm demonstrating right now will last for a few, probably another 10 streams, just going through all of these and adding shading. Yeah, I want to... Okay, last thing I'll say about AI. But AI did sort of force the issue for artists to sort of prove that they are good instead of just using a bunch of hacks to... Like in some artist cases, it's been true that they had a big following, but then it was revealed that they were doing a lot of tracing. And there's some debate out there as to whether or not tracing is cheating. And I don't endorse tracing as a particularly effective learning method of anything. But there are times when I guess it has to be necessary, so I don't think it should be, people should be vilified for it. But I think part of being on, like, if we're gonna be accusing using AI or machines to do work, to do artwork, if that's not good, then, you know, we should be honest about all the things where we're sort of taking liberties and taking shortcuts. Like, if I think, you know, go ahead and use AI, but disclose that it's AI so that people who don't want to see it don't have to see it. If you're using AI and then saying, yeah, this is my work, this represents my skill level, when in fact it doesn't, that's a big problem. Like, authenticity is a big problem. Artists get hired on their skill levels, like their actual skill levels. So if people are being dishonest about where their skills are, that's a problem for the project, it's a problem for the people who hire that artist, it's a problem for the artist, and it's a problem for the other artists out there too, because they lose that opportunity to be on that job. And the community of artists in general take a reputational hit as sort of, yeah, I got scammed by this artist. Darn, all artists they're so scammy, you know. I read stuff like that online where, like, yeah, I hired this person to do commissions and then they just traced and I didn't get what I wanted and I feel like I got taken advantage of. I'm like, I have as a bigger problem with artists that do that stuff. We're human. I'm against that the same way that I am against AI and those things. People have a right, like, people who consume art have a right to know that it's real or where it comes from. And so by streaming, we sort of cut to the chase with all the, you know, was this made by AI? It's like, no. You know it wasn't, because I did it live. I did it live in in front of anybody who wanted to look. And the whole process was right there. And if you take the time to watch it, speed it up or slow it down. Okay, Jules, here's an issue. Is these, so this thing and this thing, they're kind of too similar. Just sort of, it's okay that they're similar, but they're too similar. So I don't want an unintended pattern to be there. It's a bit of a compositional no-no. So I'm trying to think of something I can do. What if it could feel like there's some sort of interesting staircase? Yeah. Oh yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'll save right now. It just occurred to me that if I make it look like there's some sort of like interesting staircase, that might look interesting. And like an ancient looking staircase is probably not that hard to draw. Right, because it's all crumbly. That's kind of a cool idea. Yeah, it's kind of cool. I'm not saying I'm going to do this perfectly, but I'm still just trying to make it look like something in the background. It's funny how I didn't intend it to be, but there's kind of a lot of complexity now in this. I don't think it's overdone. Like, it doesn't really need to be more than, or much more than what I'm indicating. You're gonna try some 3D modeling, huh? What program do you are you eyeing? I hear Blender is very popular. Yeah, Blender is, it's definitely been the topic of discussion for some artist friends of mine. There's definitely some circles that are, and they could be right, but they're sort of advocating that we artists must adapt to things by adopting more skills, and that getting into animating boards or getting into 3D or knowing at least the basics of 3D will be good for us. I definitely see the reasoning. This is kind of becoming way too eye-catching. Not doing a good job of nope. Try something else. Let me think here. It could feel maybe that there is some kind of... I'm glad you're interested in Blender. Have you dabbled with it much, or now you're thinking about picking it up a little more? A little more intentionally? I don't think that's going to do much. But I think it's always good to learn new skills. I think if I was... I'm at a place with my work where I'm sort of picking a direction to sort of commit to, if I can, for the long term, for the rest of my career. And I feel like and now presumably you're much younger than me, but you definitely have like a good shot about like making something that is making a... Well, you... It's like you can kind of do anything when you're young, right? So that's enviable. I feel like for me, what I'll be trying to concentrate on is, as opposed to learning newer technologies and trying to stay relevant that way, I'm going to kind of do the opposite, and see what I can do to focus on being like more like a niche expert on like the classics. Oh, good, yeah. Well, I mean, Blender is great because it's free, right? It's open source. So I think if you're going to learn like some basics, and certainly like it's definitely it's definitely the sort of go-to right now for students interested in dabbling in 3D for sure. I'm not sure they take it as seriously like in the industry. I think in the in the entertainment industry more broadly, like programs like, I guess, what would it be, Maya or like Cinema 4D. But of course, those are thousands and thousands of dollars for a license. It's totally prohibitive. Probably even a student license is too much, right? So it's pretty amazing that there are free open source tools like Blender to learn on. Man, there was a time when I was young. When I was young, I was kind of lucky because we always had computers in our family. So having a computer that could run a 3D program, or even knowing what a 3D program was in the mid 90s was pretty rare. But we had some basic 3D programs that me and my friends would dabble with. And I loved that stuff. I would mess around with it for hours and hours and hours, just making nothing, making a donut shape. I think if I can, having some sharp looking, if you can kind of see what I'm doing over here, not going overboard with it, but things that feel like sharp structures in the ceiling to sort of echo the teeth of this mount of this structure here, and then the spikes and all the teeth and the sharp things that are going on over here. So something like that happening over here, and like now I like what this looks like because it feels like it reinforces that theme a little bit. And now maybe I can sort of get a little bit more intentional with the way that some of these shadows are happening here. So that even if it's subtle, it can feel a little bit like we're getting that sharp teeth visual motif. That's kind of cool, right? A little bit of pareidolia to help us out. much, though. All right, that feels like a strong theme. Okay. I'm gonna call it a day on that shading. That was an incredible slog. I'm not even caught up to where we were from the last stream, which is hilarious. Oh, yeah. Artists do a lot of funny subconscious things that funny little quirks. My mom does this thing where she goes like this. I'm not sure if here, make my face big. My mom does this thing where when she's drawing, she'll tilt her head, she'll be drawing, and she'll go like this. You know, and it's her way of, like, I guess, expressing the thinking and the I'll do this thing where I'll go like this. So I'll be drawing, I'll be like, I feel like it has this sort of centering like a meditative kind of interesting thing. Yeah. A lot of that body language stuff, it's fascinating. It's like universal visual communication. It's not the equivalent of language or like sign language, but it is like communication. But a lot of things where people touch their mouths, basically we're like consciously touching our mouths so that we don't speak, or we show that we're preventing ourselves from speaking, which gives an indication that we are thinking. So all these things, like biting on my, like literally like I'm biting on my tongue, going like that. My mom like tensing up her lips, or someone going like you know, or whatever, pointing to their mouths, touching their mouths, essentially shutting their own mouths, silencing themselves, but consciously sort of shows that we have something to say, but we're stopping ourselves from saying it. It's like in our heads, we're thinking about something deliberate, but that we want to be clear in how we are communicating. All right, I should just do my streams like this, where it's just big face here. Let's go back to this. All right, I'm gonna save my work. Let's do a little bit of skeleton shading. Yeah. And I'm gonna straight up save a whole new version, because I still don't... Wait a second. It does exist. Wait a second. It does exist. Yeah, there it is. Okay. That means we're not so far behind. Although I still like the redo of the background that we spent so much time doing. Oh, this will be funny. It's going to try and open both giant files at the same time. This will probably crash my computer. So, had I spent just 30 seconds more looking for the original saved file... Okay, so that's interesting. Okay, I think the simpler thing to do is gonna be for me to pull... Because this is good background, but it's not great. And I like better the stuff I ended up doing here, I think. Oh, just even switching between these files is gonna be a chore. Like, this is cool. This is cooler to me. It feels like there's more space. I don't know. I might change my mind later. But the solution right here is going to be, I'm going to drag this layer over to here. Put it where it goes. Turn off the old one. There we go. And that looks cool. And now we have these. Okay, now I'm going to save an all-new version, a third version. And that'll be our hero version. How silly. Okay. Close that one. Hell, I'll save it too. Why not? I found it. That seriously, because I did a good job shading those bats, so I'm pleased to find it. And realistically, it's, you know, it's not the end of the world if you lose a bit of work. But see, this vindicates me. I did save. For all the me talking about, like, I'm usually better about saving. I was good about saving. I just wasn't good about finding the thing that I saved. That's hilarious. Oh, wow. What's this random line? Look at this thing. Where are you? Yeah, okay. Randomly... Look at this dot. Where did this dot come from? Oh well. It's hidden anyway. Okay, so I'll keep shading on this. I'll keep shading on this skeleton guy. I'm gonna save, and then I'm gonna start shading on it. And I'll go for maybe another 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes. It's getting to be the beginning of the morning where I have to be aware of the children. So if you're not familiar with the Zelda games that much, I'll give you a little hint that the music that you're listening to, these are compositions, essentially fan compositions, giving their take on some very memorable themes from the video game. And I wouldn't assume that it has that much draw or appeal for people who aren't actually specifically into Zelda. Okay, cool. But it definitely feels like a natural pairing to put Zelda fan music to a Zelda fan art project. Okay, cool. There's too much color getting sucked up into these. Okay. Let's see if that helps. It's sort of interesting. How do skeletons like how are they supposed to work, right? They don't have any muscles. How do they do what they need to do? It's like that philosophical problem with zombie movies. It's like, where do they get their energy from? They just have to be pure magically evil, I guess. It doesn't make sense biologically. I do appreciate like zombie movies, especially classic ones, for their you know, the questions that they provoke. You know, questions about like what is evil and stuff like that. What is human nature and what separates us from monsters. But it is very silly when like something that has no muscles attached is like raising its arm. It doesn't make sense. That would never happen. It is. It's part of it. You gotta suspend all that and just get into it. shading a little too much with just automatic thinking when I shouldn't be. This is not intended to be like, for instance, the shading that I'm doing is specifically trying to determine where light is blocked and where it isn't. So if I'm shading the top of the shield, that might look cool and it shows the form, but the light isn't being blocked from the top of the shield. So that was a bit of a mistake. The light isn't really being blocked here. At, like, the top of the... It's okay to have a little shading where it's turning away from the light, assuming that there's... Yeah, the highlights, all that stuff is coming later, so what I'm trying... This, if anything, this is a fun discipline. Like, it might get shaded over here where the mass of his body, the skeleton's body, is blocking light from hitting the shield on that side. And then, of course, on the underside of the shield, there's going to be shading because light coming from the top is not going to get in there. But there is going to be some light, so it's not going to be totally black. And it's obviously going to get more shaded on his arm as it gets more tucked under the shield. The real lighting effects, where I'm going to do the shading, is sort of a misnomer for the process I'm going to do, because it's really going to be about lighting the scene afterward. The technique I'll be using will essentially shade it down to where there's almost no light. It'll feel like the lights got turned off. And then what we do is we add light. We add in the light effects. So it's shaded by default at that point. And then what we do is we add lighting. And that's sort of not a technique that I came up with, but it's one that I don't see. I'm hoping to kind of popularize it because it's extremely effective and I never see anybody using it. It's extremely effective, especially for like moody, low light scenes, and creating a kind of different interests akin to the kind of light that people often find compelling about AI art, like the different, like it can be very artificial looking at times, but sometimes it looks kind of amazing, and I'd like, if I can, to show a method that can help artists make something look amazing. But it isn't a instant gratification process, so gotta go through the steps. It will. I'm very confident of that. There are some things that I can admit that I'm not an expert in doing. Like, I'm not a color expert at all. I just don't have enough experience with it in my work. But I've used the coloring technique often enough to know that it can really solve problems consistently. Like really hard to solve problems. And now it's time to spread the knowledge a little bit. So this will be kind of a demonstration of its power. Yeah, it would be a... Well, it's sort of interesting because it's like, I don't know where the technique originated. I didn't come up with it, and the person who demonstrated it to me learned it online, but couldn't find... Like, they just saw it in... I don't know if they saw it, like... They were just clicking on, like, a random Tumblr link style tutorial. Tumblr style art tutorial or something. And you know how Tumblr or, like, internet links can be. It was like, you didn't really... It came out of nowhere, so you didn't really pay attention to it. And then when you assumed it, you would just be able to find it again, you couldn't. And so it sort of came out of nowhere. And luckily my friend was so smart that when he saw it, he recognized its potential. So he was able to sort of reverse engineer based on theory. And he was demonstrating it at... Because he's like a genius art director and director now, like a creative director at a big company. And there are a lot of like people who are artists and directors who don't know what they're doing, and this guy is like, he knows what he's doing. He's very smart. So like, and he used the power of like demoing it. He didn't just like talk about it. It was like, oh, just do this or whatever. Like he was like, no, come over here. I'm gonna show you how to do it. I'm show you how this works, why it works, and why I use it. And I've seen him just do amazing work with it. So I knew that it had power. And after some practice, I realized, I was like, this is not only really useful, it's actually fairly easy once you know the principles. So then I sort of adopted it as like kind of like a secret weapon for when I needed to do color stuff. When I needed to like really think about doing color the hard way. A cool effect. Okay, but that's more like what I'm trying to do here. Okay. So I kept it to myself. I didn't talk about it or whatever. But now I see that with the war with technology has caused me to see that I must unite with my fellow man and woman artists, so that we can defeat the evil machines. Okay, so let's save there. I'll go another 15 minutes. Let's see how far I can get on. I think it makes sense for me to just think about this as starting in the foreground and pushing into the background. So the next layer that I'll shade is Link. It'll be fun. There's his lines. Okay, so this will be interesting. Let me turn off the lines for this skeleton. Okay, that's those lines. use those lines. So you can see that even without the lines, you almost get this painted effect already, just based on all the shading and some of the coloring too. It's kind of neat. Like if you zoom way out, it's pretty cool. Yeah, the lines themselves will eventually, I'll either really diminish them, or I might color the lines, or just delete them entirely. Because they kind of, if I wanted to like push it into real realism, we can't really have lines just everywhere. But for now, I think they're totally fine. At least until I don't know, if I really take this to the next level or something. Shade inside of this nose a bit more. Save my work. What else? Here. I remember that I left my pressure settings a little bit too tweaked, which sort of explains a little bit of why I felt the shading was a little bit harder today. Yeah. Yeah. Almost all of the, I mean, there are only a couple of, this image and this first image are sort of based on illustrations from the original game that I was trying to improve upon. So I essentially drew them in my own style. There's that trend, like draw this in your own style sort of thing. So I reimagined those original scenes in my own style, and that helped get the ball started on this entire process. Once I did that, I had a kind of workflow that allowed me to come up with totally original compositions too, which is good. But yeah, there's a drawing out there that I used as inspiration for this sketch, and it was Link battling two skeletons at the same time. But it wasn't as dynamic as this. I wanted to really push the dynamism and sort of a modern take on video game action. So where is light blocked? Light is definitely going to be blocked here in the folds of his clothing. Around here where his shoulder is meeting his neck. The corner of his mouth. It gets blocked. The space in between his hair. The curls of his ears. The underside of his hat. Side of his nose. You should play. Don't get addicted to video games or anything like that, but the Zelda games are practically educational. They're very puzzle related. My favorite Zelda game is A Link to the Past. That was on Super Nintendo. You know, you can download emulators and just buy an old, or buy a USB Super Nintendo controller and have basically a Super Nintendo on your computer. Play those old games. But A Link to the Past is great. Fun puzzles. It's not too hard. So many people on Twitch are streaming Zelda. They're just straight up like playing the game, streaming it. So you can see some fun streams out there playing Zelda, even if all you can do is just sort of passively pay attention to it while you're doing other things. I'll do that sometimes while I'm working, drawing something boring. But I'll be like, cool, I can at least watch these cool streams, and those communities are just very much like Uchi. Welcome. Uchi, what time is it where you are? I got a question. What is the most comfortable OS to work with, Mac or Windows? I'm a Mac guy myself. I feel like it's pretty stable across versions, so where I don't feel like I don't worry about like security issues or downloading viruses or having having a security update break my system and screw me over when I need it to work. Like whatever happened with those planes the other day at the airports. I used to repair Mac computers. There was a time when I was disenchanted with being an artist because I was young and had a crazy ego. And I said, art doesn't deserve me. Can you imagine? So I was like, I'm too good for art. I'm too good to handle the rejection of trying to make it in the art world. You know, if I can't succeed on my own terms, I'm just gonna quit. You know, and so I took a hiatus from art, and I was doing whatever I could. I fell into computer repair, which I really enjoyed. I really enjoyed helping people who their computers were broken, and you know they had their whole, you know, when you think about it, like sometimes your whole life is on a computer, and then one day like it just stops working, you know. You're like, oh my god, like I didn't have a single file backed up, I didn't have, you know, my children's baby photos, you know, everything that you took for granted is there, and it's all lost. And they come in, they're so distraught, and sometimes people's computers were too far gone. There's like nothing you can do. But often enough, all that really needed to happen was I just needed to change a battery on their logic board. They went from my entire life is ruined to I'm in and out of a computer shop in 15 minutes. It's like a $60 repair diagnostic fee, basically. You get your whole life back. You thought you were dead, you know, and then you just get everything back. It's like a crazy... So when I would sort of take people through that roller coaster, I got a lot of personal fulfillment out of that, feeling like I was being really helpful when people really needed it. I really did like that. The downside to all that was my bosses were mean, and you know, this is me at like 20 years old. My bosses were mean, my coworkers were toxic. And then one day I was delivering a computer to an artist in Hollywood, because I literally worked for a Mac computer repair shop in Hollywood. And I did this in like the year 2002, 2003. So this is before Apple stores even existed. Like iTunes was a new service, iPhone didn't exist. It was sort of like during the big comeback days of Mac, because they didn't used to be the biggest company in the world. They were like the underdogs for a very long time. While I was repairing them, it only made sense since I repaired Mac computers and I worked at a reseller that I could get them for an affordable price. Like, they're expensive computers, but because I could get like the internal company discount on buying them for myself, it made sense. So I was able to do that. Yeah, there were those old colorful Macs. I used to repair those. The Let me pull up a visual. Hold on. Oh man. Here we go. Oh baby. These things, I used to have my elbows in these every day. Every day. They were not easy to repair. They were really bold for their time. They came in all sorts of colors. Yeah, I remember we had it was like this, except uglier. Just shelves and shelves of these things in various states of repair. Look at these fun things. They're amazing little machines. Perfect stuff. I became, as a person who was not necessarily academically smart, the fact that I was able to learn how to repair them, I was grateful for that knowledge. The sort of simplification of things that were very complex to me, like what made computers work, was incomprehensible. Yet the process of learning how to, because I essentially had to train myself, but luckily they were willing to sort of be patient with me as I was learning. But the whole universe of computers and computer repair and understanding what parts did what, once I understood that, I was pretty impressed and very impressed by Apple computers, definitely. And I still am. It's just I don't have, I'm certainly not in any kind of like Apple cult or anything like that. Not a rabid fanboy. But yeah, if anything, I would recommend the Mac OS. I mean, I routinely get 7 years of usefulness or more out of any Apple product I buy. My iPhone, 7 years old right now. I bought it when my daughter was being born. Apart from the battery not being great, it was great. That's my advice. Buy the best Mac you can afford. Oh, I didn't tell my story. So one day I dropped off a computer system for a artist living in Hollywood. And he wanted me to install new RAM. And then he was like, hang out for a second while I make sure it works. You know, so I installed like new RAM on his system and some software. And he was like, let me make sure it works. You know, it's understandable. He paid for it, wanted to make sure it worked. So he fired up his drawing program and he was doing some things just to double check that it was working, that everything was installed okay. And it was. I did a good job. Everything was installed okay. The program that he was using is this program, which is Painter. The reason I use Painter is because I saw that he was an artist living, like I was asking, because although I wasn't working as an artist at the time, I still had interest in art, and it wasn't really on my radar that you could be an entertainment artist and work at home and afford a giant house, you know, in Hollywood. And yet this guy was doing it. And, you know, maybe his wife worked or something like that, or maybe he was already independently wealthy. But, like, for me, the optics were clear. It was like, whoa, you're an artist, you're using this program, and, like, I'm here. Like, what can I take away from this that I can use? Because I'm getting nowhere fast in my computer career. And he was like, yeah, man, all I really do is paint out little Muppet like the lines and the strings that control puppets on like Muppet movie or something like that when they want to erase those because they can be ugly. Or like the lines that hold up stuntmen, the safety lines. They've like in the Matrix or whatever. They want to erase that. Well, that was this guy's job. He just sat at home listening to crazy music. Local grandpa, it is, I got up at 3 a.m. I got up early. So, anyway, he demonstrated something that I hadn't realized, which is like, yes, being a digital artist isn't like being a pure artist or whatever. But hey, you can make some money and pay your bills. And that night, I pirated the copy of his software, his Painter program. I had already made a copy of it anyway, because we did that for archival purposes. But I was like, screw it, I'm going to install it on my machine. And I started messing with it like immediately. And that was sort of the beginning of my second stab at being an artist, was being a computer repairman, and then one fateful day going to a digital artist's house to install his RAM. And then that was it. I did I within a year from that point, because I took a while to practice and learn a little bit about how to draw digitally. But within a year, I was making a meager but real living, just drawing digitally for whoever needed artwork on Craigslist, which is like a job posting site from the early 2000s. And yes, I was well versed in software piracy in my youth. But yeah, it's a good thing it was interesting, like, in a roundabout way. It was good that I had that detour to learn about how to work with computers and take care of computers, and the importance of saving and backing up all that data. And now, here I am. Here I am streaming on Twitch. Okay, that's a decent start. Some shading on the face. Okay. Aunt Local Grandpa's right. It is time to... Ooh, cheap viewers. Let me delete this bozo. How do I... Let's see here. What does that do? Ah, here we go. Ban. You're banned. Okay. Let's see here. I'm going to quickly turn on the multiply layer. It's time for me to stop the stream, so I'm going to call it for now. Yeah, it's a fun, I tell it too often, but yeah, it's a fun little story of how Max got going. Okay, some decent progress today. Yeah, we did some other stuff here too. So, all right. Thank you guys for popping in. Love the, yeah, save. I'm saving now. Okay. Okay, it's saving. All right. I'm going to end like that. Thanks so much for popping in, and I'll try to do it again tomorrow morning. And Hot Local Grandpa, go to bed. All right. Thanks, everybody. Bye.